Shalaknai Nahwenjatonja. Now that I have your attention, I created this podcast to understand the language shift from our ancestral language to English and to identify language ideologies in the Alaskan Gwich'in communities and to develop an intervention plan that identifies resources and promotes moving forward with language learning and gaining fluency to reverse our language shift. My audience is students and teachers in Gwich'in classes. These students are primarily located in the language speaking and learning communities of the Yukon Flats and all of my peers and fellow language learners that are interested. To gather this information, I conducted 6 interviews with female and male, young adults, and elderly. Here is the information gathered from those interviews and their views on the Gwich'in language. To understand the linguistic ecology, the interviewees described the current state of Gwich'in as facing language endangerment, not many fluent speakers are elderly, language is not normalized in the community, not speaking to younger people because they would not understand, migration into non-speaking communities, little to no heritage language in the school, language learning apathy, no education of historical trauma, and not addressing healing or intergenerational trauma and the effects of colonization. When asked why they thought that our languages were becoming threatened and extinct, the young adults said that their families never speak to them in Gwich'in. People in the community don't speak to them in Gwich'in because they had just assumed they don't understand. The adults talked about their parents being able to understand but would not speak because they were brought up not to speak and to be ashamed. And the elders that I interviewed talked about actually being shamed and beaten when they were younger for speaking their language. And so it took them a long time to come around to be able to know that it was okay for them even to speak in Gwich'in and to try to hold on to our language and continue it out in the community. When asked, what does our language mean to you? The interviewees' answers were, it's a part of my identity. It's my culture. It's who I am. It helps me to understand my culture and my people. It helps me to feel closer to my ancestors and my family. My language teaches me things about my culture, and I learn new things all the time. When asked, where are the language resources in the village? The answers were, in our native names, in the labeled buildings in the community, in our hunting, in our subsistence, in our nonprofit organization called Gwich'in, in the Yukon Flats School District bilingual programs, in the Native Language Technical Institute, in ANLC's resources, in our elders sharing their knowledge, in language archives, in the growing interest among Native people, in the language that's spoken in the village meetings, church, radio, and potlatches, and even in social media, posting on Facebook and YouTube in Gwich'in. When asked, what are your suggestions for promoting fluency? The interviewees suggested to visit and spend time with fluent speaking elders, to have more language in the schools, create iPad apps for children and families to use, create opportunities to use the language with the youth, use their interest to begin conversations, be a good model with language activism, learn genealogy, listen to elder stories, and to just speak it. And like my teacher Patrick said, just know that the act of language learning itself is a powerful thing. Masit cho for watching this video. Without realizing it, you have been thinking in terms of linguistic studies to help understand and talk about our languages, such as the linguistic ecology and the ideologies of our village, what the social trajectories are and the linguistic survivance of our language, as I've been studying in my university program. These concepts come from what I've been studying in my textbook titled Youth Culture, Language, Endangerment, and Linguistic Survivance by Lacey Wyman. We are all aware of this threat to our language, so what will you do to make a difference? How can you take one small step every day? Which elder will you visit? And when will you go to the language center? Something to think about. Masicho, ninahoya.